What would you do if an unexpected bond formed with someone you never thought who'd connect with? The question coiled through my thoughts, relentless and intoxicatingly wrong, yet I found myself unable to shake it off. It all began with a glance, not the kind you give your stepson as he stumbles into the kitchen sleepy, and after a late night Northekand you offer when he laughs a bit too hard at your jokes, his gaze lingering just a heartbeat longer than it ought. Tono, this was something entirely different, was a look filled with hunger and I should have turned away but I couldn't. Night it unfolded, an unsettling stillness enveloped the house. My husband Mark was away on yet another business trip, his third this month. The excuses he offered were growing increasingly flimsy, and his absences stretched longer. I ceased to ask questions. The silence thathing between us had morphed into arrowbones of its own. It left me with himmy stepson 22, all lean muscle and restless energy, sporting a smile that melt ice and eyes that burned with an intensity one dared not name. He had been living with us since he was 16, following the swift and cruel departure of his mother, Mark's first wife, Tokanser. I endeavored to be what he needed was a steady presence, a friend, amather figure, but that night, everything changed. I was in the living room, curled up on the couch, with a glass of wine, pretending to watch some forgettable rom-com. The flickering light of the Tevantage shadows across the walls and Thyr smelled like vanilla from the candle. I had lit something sweet to distract me from the loneliness. Then I heard his footsteps, low and deliberate. Ethan appeared in the doorway, fresh from a workout. He appeared casual, a towel slung over his shoulder from the workout. Hey hot, just finished. His in my throat went dry. Don't look. Don't you dare look, but I did. He ran a hand through his dark hair, his biceps flexing with the movement, and smirked. You're up late. Couldn't sleep? I murmured, forcing my eyes back to the TV. Hadn't leave. Instead, he walked closer, the heat of his body radiating as he sank onto the couch beside me. Too close, far too close. I could smell him cleanse-sweet, the faintest hint of his collagen, something raw and male. My pulse, kick it up, traitorous. You, okay? He asked, voice low. I took a sip of wine, desperate for something to occupy my hands. The silence was palpable and I felt the weight of his words before he even spoke. The way he said it made my stomach flip, serious nervous. I turned to him, and that's when I noticed it. His eyes dropping to my lips, his breath hitching, finger switching, as if he longed to reach Fom. God, what is it? I whispered. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Never been with anyone. The confession hung between us, heavy and suffocating. Blink what I managed. I'm 22, he muttered, running a hand over his face. Had never experienced anything like this before. My stepson, a virgin, looked at me with an intensity that ignited a thrill within me, one I despised for feeling. Ethan began to speak, but he interrupted himself. His voice rough. Ash declared, I don't want some random girl, I want it to mean something. My heart raced at his words. You'll find Samayan. I managed to say, but hair plight I already have. The air left me lungs as his hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine, callous and warm. You have no idea how long I've wanted this, he confessed, while every rational thought screamed in protest. Ori pulled away, laughter bubbling up as a reminder to him and to myself that this was wrong. Yet his thumb brushed over McKnuckles, slow and sensual, and something inside me cracked. I should have said, Noi should have run, but when our eyes locked and suddenly the distance between us disappeared in a moment of impulsiveness, I didn't stop him. That was the moment I ruined everything. The kiss deepened, his hand sliding into my hair, pulling me closer. As if he would die, I didn't. I melted into him, my body betraying me with every shuddering breath. His touch was fire, his mouth sinful, and when he whispered please against my lips, I was lost. I said yes, and, oh God, it was electric. His hand sunsure at first grew bolder, my skin burned, where he touched me, every brush off his finger, sending sparks through my veins. He was eager, desperate, beautiful in his need, and when he finally, I can't not yet, because this is where the begins, this is where I tell Yahoo. One reckless, intoxicating night destroyed my marriage, my family, my life, and I'll warn you now, you won't see ending coming. My name is Miriam Carterand. By the time at 42, I found myself having relinquished the notion of happiness to the outside world. My life appeared enviable, a spacious suburban home, a successful husband, and a polished shed smile that I wore like armor. Yet beneath this meticulously crafted facade, I was drowning. I hadn't always felt this way. Once I was the girl who dreamed in bold strokes. I studied art history and collegiantazing about working in galleries and traveling the world. Then reality struck. Student loans, a recession, and the slow suffocating pressure to settle and win. I encountered Mark, the union that lacked passion and thrived on practicality. Mark Carter presented himself as the archetype of corporate charm, handsome, impeccably groomed, with sharp eyes and a smile that exuded a sense of security. 12 years my senior divorced, he bore the quiet sorrow of Eamon, who had lost his first wife far too early. I didn't love him, but I found him agreeable. And at 30 with my aspirations gathering dust, that felt sufficient after a year and a half, we wed a choice deemed sensible by my mother who assured me he would provide for me, and he did though, not in the ways that truly mattered, leaving me with the sense of a step that never quite fit when I took that leap into marriage. Mark inherited a shadow. Ethan, his then 16-year-old son, Ethan was a storm cloud in human form, brooding and closed off, still raw from losing his mother. He barely spoke to me those first months, just glared from under his messy dark hair as if I were an intruder. I tried. God, I tried. I made his favorite meals with extra garlic. I attended his soccer games, yet he never looked calm in the stands. I even framed a photo of his mom and left it on his dresser, but he threw it in a drawer. Then one night I heard crying through his bedroom door. I didn't knock or I remained silent, leaning against the wall outside, waiting for the sobs to subside. The next morning made me coffee for the first time. It was burnt, yet I drank every drop. Year slipped by, and Ethan transformed into Ammon, broad-shouldered, sharp-witted, bearing his father's smile but lacking his restraint. He left for Collegerant and drifted through part-time jobs. Mark chose to ignore his son's shamelessness, just as he chose to overlook our marriage. Wasn't cruel, it was simply devoid of life. We ceased too touchiest to talk and shared only thistleants of sleep, a back-to-back like strangers, sharing a bed. I convinced itself it was normal for passion to fade for everyone. Then I caught him texting her, "Can't stop thinking about last night." He claimed it was a colleague's mistake. I didn't believe him, but what could I do? Leave and start over at 42 with nothing? So I stayed the night. Everything changed. The first time I truly saw Ethan, not as me stepson, but as a man, was 3 months bare. The kiss. He came home late, smelling like beer in the summer heat, his t-shirt clinging to his chest. I was at the sink rinsing a wine glass, as he stepped behind me to grab a glass of water. His chest brushed against my backhand. In that fleeting moment time seemed to freeze. The air between us crackled with an unspoken tension, and then he muttered an apology before leaving, yet his gaze lingered, igniting a spark within me. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen when Ethan confessed that he was a virgin. I should have allowed it off, teased him, or played the maternal card, but the way he looked at him, as if I held the key to some desperate prayer, unraveled me completely. No one had ever looked at me like that in years, not Mark, no Tanyan, and when his fingers traced merest, asking without words, I made that choice that would ruin us both. Let him understand her, even if you hate yourself for it. You're judging me now. I tend the silence. How could she? What kind-off woman does that? But here's the truth. I just wanted Ethan. I wanted to feel wanted, to be more than a placeholder in my own life, and when he kissed me for the first time in a decade, I felt a liveth night. The world stopped. It was thickened of humid summer evening that my deathy clothes felt like a punishment. Mark had departed for yet another business trip, the same one he undertook every month, always returning with a faint perfume clinging to his collar. That wasn't mine. The house was too quiet, tumpty, just me, a half-empty bottle off me, and the restless energy of a Monwo. Wasn't my husband. Annan had been different all week, more intense, more present, lingering in doorways, brushing against me in the hallway. His gaze lingered just a second too long on my bare legs. When I stretched out on the couch, I told myself I didn't notice what a delight it was playing cards at the kitchen table, engaged in some ridiculous string game he had picked up in college. Maybe we should play something a bit more exciting, he joked, winking playfully. He joked, a smirk dancing on his lips as he took a sip of his beer. My eyes dismissing his suggestion, but my pulse quickened at the thought. He wasn't entirely joking. I could see it in the way his fingers tapped restlessly against the table, in the way his gaze darkened as I licked wine from my lips. And then he cheated. Deliberately. Usurer. I laughed, calling him out. His voice dropped rough around the edges. Maybe Uji Stone like losing. I reached for his skirts, and he caught my wrist. His grip was neither tight nor loose on his thumb. Oh, that thumb stroked the delicate skin beneath my palm in slow deliberate circles. The air between us thickened and neither of us moved. Then his voice, barely above a whisper, urged him to tell him to stop. I didn't. His lips found mine before I could think, desperate and hungry. The kiss was sweet, gentle, a claim all teeth and tongue and pent up need. His hands tangled in my hair, and a gasp escaped me as emotions overwhelmed. A sound of pleasure. I should have pushed him away. Instead, I clung to him, his body pressed against mine, a lean muscle and burning skin. He carried scent of sweat, cheap beer, and something darker, a raw masculinity thought made my stomach clench. When his high reached out instinctively, but I stepped back, realizing the boundary we must not cross. Rough and impatient, I surrendered to the moment. I want you, he growled against my mouth, his breath hot and urgent. I knew exactly how long he had desired this for. I had yearned for it too. The kitchen counter dug into my bacchus, he lifted me onto it, knocking over wineglass which shattered on the floor. Neither of us cared. His mouth trailed down my neck, teeth grazing my pulse point, igniting a fire within my his head fell back with a gasp, his hands were everywhere, tracing my body as if he had etched it into his dreams. I've thought about this, he admitted, his voice raw. The confession should have horrified me, yet for the first time in years I felt truly seen. The revelation that shattered me. I've never been with anyone. When Ethan confessed he was a virgin, I should have allotted off teased him, played the mom card, but the way he looked at me, as if he held the key to some desperate prey run, revolted me, for no one had ever looked at me like that in those years. Not marked by anyone, his fingers traced merest, asking without words, I made that would ruin us both, letting him in. You understand her, even if you hate yourself for it. I can hear your judgment in the silence. How could show it kind of woman does that? But her rest. Truth, I just wanted Ethan. I wanted to feel, wanted to be more than a placeholder in my own life, and when he kissed me for the first time in a decade I felt alive that night. The world stopped. It was the kind of humid summer evening that made clothes felt like a punishment. Mark had departed for yet another business trip, the same one Hoinder took each month, always returning with a faint perfume on his collar. That wasn't mine. The house was too quiet, too empty. Just me, a half-empty bottle off Marrow, and the restless energy of a man. Woe wasn't my husband. Ian had been all week more intense, more present, lingering in doorways, brushing against me in the hallway, his gaze lingering just a second too long on my bare legs. When I stretched out on the couch, I told myself I didn't notice Ely. We gathered around the kitchen table, gauged in a mindless drinking game he-had picked up in college. Maybe we should play something a bit more exciting, he joked, winking playfully. He quipped, a smirk playing on his lips as he took a sip of his beer. I rolled my eyes, dismissing the suggestion, but my heart raced at the thought he wasn't entirely joking. I could see it in the way his fingers droomed against the table, wristless, and in the deepening shadows of his gaze as I traced my tongue along my lips, savoring the wine. When he cheated Elad, calling him out Yeshua, his voice dropped rough around the edges. Maybe you just don't like losing Erich for his cards. And he gently caught my wrist. His grip was neither tight nor loose, yet it held a certain weight. His thumb, oh that thumb grazeth delicate skin beneath my palm, in slow deliberate circles. The air between us thickened and neither of us dared to move. Then his voice, barely above a whisper, urged me to tell him to stop. I didn't. His lips found mine before I could think, desperate and hungry. The kiss was sweet, gentle, yet it felt like acclaimed teeth and tongue entwined hishans, tangled in my hair, and a moan escaped my throat, a sound of pure pleasure. I should have pushed him away, but instead I clung to him, his body pressed against mine. All lean muscle and burning skin, he carried the scent off sweet cheap beer and something darker, a raw masculinity that made my stomach lynch. When he reached out instinctively, but I stepped back, realizing the boundary we must not cross. Rough and impatient, I surrendered to him. I want you, he growled against Memuth, his voice thick with desire. I understood I had longed for this too. The kitchen counter dug into my back, Ash lifted me onto it, knocking over Thuine glass, its shards scattering across floor. Neither of us cared. His mouth trailed down my neck, teeth grazing, my pulse point igniting a fire within me. His head fell back with a gasp, his hands were everywhere, mapping my body, as if he'd memorized it in his dreams. I've thought about this, he admitted, his voice raw. The confession should have horrified me. The caption read, how long did you think you could hide? The text arrived at 2:37 a.m. I lay, wide awake and snared in the sheets, me body still resonating with the echoes of touch from hours before. Beside me, Mark snored blissfully unaware. Suddenly my phone illuminated with a message from an unknown number. You have 24 hours to tell him, or I will attach it as another photo of Ethan opposite against the hallway wall. My head thrown back, his mouth on my throat, my stomach dropped. Someone new, and they weren't just watching, they were waiting. I spent the next 6 hours in a haze of panic, running through possibilities. The neighbor Mrs. Wilkins, who always seemed to be peering through her blinds when Ethan's car stayed parked too late. Mark's assistant, the sharp-eyed woman, would accidentally sent me those dinner seeps, or God help me, Mark himself setting a trap to see how far I'd fallen in when I revealed the texts to Hyman. He merely smirked. Let them talk. Hest, are you insane? I hissed, panic rising within me. This could ruin us. Heck, you puffed my face, his thumb gently tracing my trembling lip, or it could finally set us free. Then came the next message, even more chilling. Unknown. Meet me tonight at 9 p.m. The old boathouse stood in solitude, a witness to the unfolding drama that the entire town would soon bear witness to. Fixated on the words before me, watching them dissolve into a haze. This was more than mere blackmail. It was a moment, a reckoning, I discovered Mark in his stud-eye, amber liquid, cascading into a glass already brimming, his knuckles pale as he gripped the bottle. "We need to talk," I stated, but he remained engrossed, his gaze averted about Ethan the air. Left my lungs he had known all this time. I had expected rage a scream, but instead, Mark just sighed exhausted. "I've been waiting for you to tell me." Tears burned my eyes. How long had it been since the first time he finally met my gaze, his own hollow? "The cameras caught you." The word hit like a punch. He had filmed us. Mark slid his laptop toward me. On screen Ethan and I in the kitchen, his hands under my shirt in the living room, my lips on his neck in our bed. "You set this up." I whispered. I needed proof. His voice was eerily calm. A divorce-ackling truth enveloped me. He desired me betrayal, a means for him to exit unscathed. Then came the devastating revelation. "Ethan's gone." Mark Declarettis' voice, steady. "Send him to his grandfather's in Colorado." Apparently, he took a slow sip of his whiskey, the weight of his words sinking in. "Less you want me to My blood turned to ice. Mark had orchestrated this with meticulous precision, and now he held all the power in a fit of rage. I lunged for the laptop, shattering it against the floor. Mark didn't flinch. "It's backed up," he stated matter-of-factly. I wanted to scream, but instead, I did the only thing I could. Rant. The boathouse awaited a empty. No blackmailer, no confrontation, just my reflection in the dark water. A woman woe gambled everything and lost. Mark didn't waste time. The documents arrived 3 days after my failed escape, delivered by a stone-faced lawyer who refused to meet my eyes. The terms were brutal: no alimony, infidelity clause, Section 4B, no claim to the house, marital misconduct, Exhibit D, video files, no contact with Ethan, restraining order pending is scrolled. My name at the bottom. Handshaking, and handed it back without a word. What was there to say? I did this. Tommy's self. Scandal travels fast in a small town. By the time I dared to step outside, us whispers followed me like shadows. Grocery store cashier, a woman I'd known for years, pursed her lips and turned away. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid me. Even the barista at the coffee shop, who used to greet me by name, pretended not to recognize me. I was no longer Miriam Carter, respected wife, dependable friend. I was that woman Theon who slept with her stepson. The one who destroyed her marriage, the one who let herself be if I attempted to reach Ethan. Dialing his number 20 times on Lido, discover it had been disconnected. Mark had ensured that the last time encountered him he was furious, wild Withinger, vowing he would find a way back to home. But that was before his father threatened him with legal destruction. He was sent off to Colorado. He came to the realization that he wasn't worth the price. I drove to Thelic on a frigid November night. The Samione where Mark and I had taken Ethan fishing years ago. The water was as dark as night. I stood at the edge, my toes curling over the dock. Splintered wood lie, wept, lamenting the path my desire shod carved. Would anyone care? Then my phone vibrated in my pocket, a solitaire message from an unknown sender. I never discovered who it was, but I chose toast up. Nothing disastrous ensued. I awoke eradicated to a different state, assumed a new identity, and secured a position at a bookstore where my past remained a secret. Some nights Ethan haunts my dreams, his hands, his mouth. The way he gazed at me as if I were his entire world, yet the truth resurfaces. I was never his love story. I was merely his act of rebellion, and he was mine. A desire ignites a flame that both warms and thrills, yet if one is not vigilant it can lead to ruin. A year later, a postcard appeared devoid of a return address, bearing just 3 words in a handwriting I recognized. Was it worth? I'd never replied, but deep down, I already knew. Ethan's future unfolded an relentless series of jagged consequences in motion. The moment his father sent them away, stripped of his trust fund reputation and any connection to thieves he vowed he couldn't leave behind, he arrived in Colorado, hollow-eyed and furious, crashing on his grandfather's cock in a cramped mountain town where Averion knew his shame. Before he even stepped off the bus, the whispers followed him like ghosts. That's the boy Will slept with his stepmother, the one Will broke his family apart. Though he tried to drown the memories in whiskey and reckless bar fights, the truth clung to him like a second skin. His unsubcharming smile had twisted into a sneerous confidence, replaced by a simmering grudge that cost him job after job, leaving him with nothing but manual labor roofing under the weight of his past. The blistering sun swung a hammer until Hishans bled while his father's lawyers answered. He couldn't reach Miriam. No thought it mattered after the 5th Hans-word letter, sent to her old dadress, each one more desperate than Thelist. I still love you, I didn't mean for this to happen. I'll find a way back to you. But she was already gone, vanished into a new life where he didn't exist. The realization carved something vital out of him, leaving him hollow, until one night drunk, and in a trembling motel room, He reached out to his father for the first time in years, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why did you do this to me?" he asked, only to be met with Mark's icy finality. "You did it, Toyer." In that moment Ethan grasped Ed's harsh truth. There was no redemption, grand reunion, only the slow suffocating weight of a mistake that would forever define him. He ceased the fight, abandoned his dreams, and allowed the years to grind him down into Sumian, harder, colder. A man who drifted through relationships like a ghost, incapable of trust, incapable of real intimacy. Alowaist, poised on the precipice of anticipation, lingered outside a diner in an nondescript town one autumn evening. Ash approached, 30, through the window, heck outside of a woman whose resemblance to Miriam stirred a deep ache within his chest. For the first time in a decade, he dared to entertain the thought of what might have been had he chosen a different path, yet the weight of that contemplation was too much to bear. He lit a cigarette, turned up his sculler against the wind, and continued on his way, for some roads are destined to lead only one way, and his had long since reached its end. The narrative unfolds as a haunting exploration of lost possibilities, or a cautionary tale unfolds, exploring the destructive power of complicated feelings and their irreversible consequences of selfish choices. It illustrates how momentary passion can unravel entire lives when reason is abandoned for lust, revealing that what begins as a thrilling transgression often culminates in isolation and regret. Miriam's journey demonstrates how emotional neglect in a marriage can foster vulnerability to dangerous temptations, yet never justifies betrayal. Meanwhile, Ethan's fate highlights how youthful obsession and inexperience can be manipulated into perilous outcomes. That lifelong damage unfolds in a narrative that emphasizes hidden costs of taboo relationships, denting far beyond mere physicality or trust, erodes his family's fracturant identities, bear permanent stains, leaving neither character unscathed. Miriam loses her marriage, home, and dignity, while Ethan forfeits his future and the ability to form healthy relationships. The story underscores harsh judgment of those who transgress fundamental moral boundaries, especially when power dynamics are unequal, revealing the profound consequences of their choices, how effortlessly desire can transform into passion, and how swiftly secrets morph. Weapons wielded by the aggrieved, with Mark's chilling revenge illustrating that certain bedrolls ignite a calculated cruelty, even in those once indifferent. The tale serves as a cautionary reminder that forbidden moments seldom culminate in shared joy, but rather in uneven devastation, where a more vulnerable party, Ethan, burst brunt of the fallout. The conclusion intimates that some errors are beyond redemption, lingering as enduring scars no matter the depth of regret. The story serves as a dark mirror reflecting the viewer's potential for moral failure when deprived of validation and connection. It challenges readers to scrutinize the voids in their own lives that may render them vulnerable to similar temptations, while affirming that certain boundaries exist for significant social and psychological reasons. The narrative structure itself acts as a form of moral instruction, ensuring that neither protagonist achieves redemption or a reunion, but instead faces the hollow aftermath of their choices, devoid of a happy ending, but reinforcing that certain lines once crossed cannot be uncrossed. The final postcard's haunting question, "Was it worth it?" lingers over the entire narrative, serving as the essential query every potential actor must confront before taking action. The tale's strength lies in its refusal to sanitize consequences or offer easy forgiveness, instead presenting the aftermath of lust with brutal honesty. It stands as a warning that some fires held never be ignited, for they cannot be controlled, only endured.